I went to a baby shower, and there was a game, a very simple game, at least it looked simple. The goal was to match baby socks, that was it. A pile of tiny socks, a timer, and whoever matched the most pairs won. Now, a woman went right before me. She was folding and pairing socks almost aggressively. And while everyone else was watching her play the game, I was watching the mistakes. Because in that pile, there were several blue socks. And at first glance, they looked identical. Same color, same size, same basic design, but they were not identical. The lines on the socks were different. That was the trap. So by the time it was my turn, I had already made a decision. Do not touch the blue socks first. Ignore them, match everything else, clear every easy win, then go back for the high-risk pile at the end. And that is exactly what I did. She actually folded more socks than I did. She moved faster than I did. She looked more productive than I did. But because I had already seen where the confusion was going to happen, I ended up with cleaner matches. And I won. Well, technically it ended in a tie, and then we pulled cards. I pulled an ace, she pulled a 5, and I won. And when the game ended, I had this strange thought. Was that cheating? Not because I broke any rules, I didn't. Not because she didn't have the same chance to observe, she did. But because my brain did something automatically. It scanned the system, it noticed the bottleneck. It predicted where people would get stuck, and then it adjusted before I ever touched the socks. And that moment made me think of something much bigger, because if you're an INFJ, or even if you just relate to that kind of mind, you've probably had moments like that your entire life. Moments where you're not trying to be strategic, you just are. Moments where you're not trying to outperform people, you just see what they missed. Moments where you don't necessarily work harder, but you work from a different mental map. So what is that? Is it overthinking? Is it intuition? Is it anxiety? Is it pattern recognition? And why does something that can help you win also leave you feeling guilty, tired, or misunderstood? That's what I want to talk about today, because I don't think many INFJs are actually overthinking. I think they are simulating reality. And once you understand the difference, a lot of your life starts to make a lot more sense. Cognitive scientists use terms like episodic future thinking for mentally simulating possible future experiences. And this kind of simulation relies on many of the same systems used to remember the past. When people say you overthink, what they usually mean is you're taking too long. You're considering too much. You're turning one thing into 10 things. And on the outside, that can absolutely be what it looks like. But on the inside, many INFJs are not just repeating the same thought, they are testing possible realities. If I say this, what happens next? If I trust this person, what pattern am I stepping into? If I accept this opportunity, what does it cost me 6 months from now? If I respond emotionally right now, what will I wish I had done tomorrow? That's not always random overthinking. A lot of the time, it is simulation. It is the mind trying to live ahead of the moment. And if that sounds dramatic, think about how often this happens in ordinary life. You're about to send a text. Someone else types one sentence and hits send. You type, delete, rewrite, read the emotional tone. Imagine how they'll hear it. Imagine what they might say back. Imagine how you'll feel if the tone lands wrong. And now, before the message has even left your phone, you've already visited 4 futures. Or maybe you're walking into a job interview. Someone else is thinking about the first question. You are already feeling the room, predicting the energy, noticing the hiring manager's pace, thinking about what kind of answer will connect. Thinking about what kind of answer will sound too polished. Thinking about whether the role is actually aligned with who you are. You are not only answering the interview, you are forecasting the relationship. Or maybe you're in a friendship, a family situation, or a romantic relationship. And someone says, you're reading too much into it. But you're not only reading the word they said, you're reading the timing, the shift, the inconsistency, the pattern, the probable consequence. And then people wonder why you seem tired before anything has even happened. It's because mentally, something has already happened. Sometimes many things have already happened. In Myers-Briggs language, INFJs are often described as insight-oriented and visioning, with introverted intuition framed as connecting themes, images, and future possibilities. In INFJ language, a lot of people would call this NI, introverted intuition, that inner sense that something connects, that something is heading somewhere, that details are not just details, they are clues. Now, whether or not you personally use personality type language, the human experience behind it is real. Many people do have a mind that naturally looks for patterns, consequences, and hidden structure. And when that mind is healthy, grounded, and in the right environment, it can become a real strategic advantage. That's what happened with the socks. I didn't try harder. I just looked for the invisible friction point, and the moment I saw it, the game changed. But here's the part that matters. If this is such an advantage, why do so many people with this mind spend half their life feeling slow, anxious, or misunderstood? Because strategy and stress can look almost identical from the outside. There's a version of simulation that is incredibly useful, and there's a version that becomes a trap. The useful version says, I see the pattern. I see the likely bottleneck. I see where this could go. I can prepare. The trapped version says, I need to keep running the scenario until I feel safe. And that second one, that's where a lot of INFJs get exhausted. Because there is no finish line for total certainty. You can always run one more scenario. You can always imagine one more complication. You can always prepare for one more misunderstood moment. And this is where the line between wisdom and worry starts to blur. Because future thinking can help us solve problems. But repetitive negative future thinking can also feed anxiety. Future simulation can support planning and problem solving, but when it becomes repetitive and negative, it overlaps with worry and repetitive negative thinking linked to anxiety and depression. So if you've ever felt like, I can see things coming, but I also can't relax, indeed, that makes complete sense. If you've ever felt like my mind is helpful in a crisis, but relentless in ordinary life, yes, that makes sense. If you've ever felt like I can solve other people's problems faster than my own because my own choices branch into too many futures, that makes perfect sense too. Because the gift is not the problem. The lack of boundaries around the gift is the problem. So how do you know when your simulation is helping you and when it's quietly draining your life? Here is one simple test. Does your thinking move you closer to action or just closer to temporary emotional relief? That's a real dividing line. If your thinking helps you make a cleaner decision, good. If it helps you notice the blue socks before you waste time, good. If it helps you sense that a project is headed toward a preventable problem, good. But if it keeps you circling the same possibility because you are trying to eliminate every risk, that is not strategy anymore. That is a safety ritual. And safety rituals feel productive because they use your best skills, but they can still keep you stuck. This is one of the reasons high insight people can be misunderstood. People assume hesitation means weakness. Sometimes hesitation is actually overload. Too many branches, too many possible endings, too much pre-lived reality. And you know what's interesting? The world usually only rewards the visible part. The person moving fastest, the person talking loudest, the person who looks decisive. But some of the most important decisions in life are not won by speed. They are won by perception, by sequence, by timing, by noticing the hidden variable. That is why the sock game matters. It was tiny, it was playful, but it exposed a life pattern. You were both given the same pile, the same timer, the same colors, the same rules, but you were not looking at the same game. And if that sentence hits you, that is probably because it is not just about socks. It is about school, work, relationships, family dynamics, leadership, business, boundaries. You walk into rooms other people think are simple, and you can already feel the complexity underneath them. Let me give you a few more examples of what simulation looks like in real life. Sometimes it looks like replaying a conversation before you have it. You haven't confronted the person yet, but mentally you already know the likely defense, the likely deflection, the likely guilt trip, the likely moment where you'll be tempted to back down. So by the time the conversation happens, you're not improvising, you're arriving with a map. Sometimes it looks like entering a team project and knowing exactly where it will break. Not because you're negative, because you can already see the mismatch. This person is enthusiastic but inconsistent. This person is smart but vague. This person will wait until the last minute. This part of the system has no owner. That deadline is not realistic. Again, people call it overthinking until the exact thing happens that you quietly predicted. Sometimes it looks like spending 20 minutes deciding whether to say yes to something that sounds wonderful on the surface. because your mind is not reacting only to the event. It is calculating the downstream cost, the travel, the time, the recovery, the emotional labor, the expectation it creates, the version of you that might have to show up there. That is not always fear. Sometimes it is precision. But precision gets painful when you never come back to the present, because the present is the only place where life can actually be lived. And that leads to one of the most important questions in this whole video. If your mind is so good at simulating reality, why does it sometimes make reality harder to enter? Because imagined experience can feel emotionally real enough to satisfy the brain temporarily, without giving you any real-world feedback. Research on counterfactual thinking shows that the mind simulates alternatives to reality, and those simulations can shape emotion, intention, and future behavior. That means you can work through a situation in your head for hours and still be no wiser about what the real world would do. And this is where regret starts to enter the picture. Because when simulation replaces action entirely, you don't get closure. You get possibility, and possibility can haunt people far longer than clear outcomes. That is why some INFJs are not haunted mainly by rejection. They're haunted by alternate timelines. What if I had said it? What if I had gone? What if I had trusted myself? What if I had not kept trying to perfect the move before I made the move? Simulation can protect you from chaos, but it can also protect you from life. If this feels painfully familiar, pause for a second and tell me in the comments, what is one area of your life where your mind runs scenarios the most? Relationships, career, conversations, creative work, health? Put just one word if that's easier. And if these conversations help you feel seen, subscribe, not for a vanity metric, for a library of deeper conversations about emotional intelligence, psychology, and the hidden patterns behind how people actually live. Now here's the next question. If simulation is not inherently the problem, what turns it into suffering? One answer is this: simulation without signal. In other words, you keep trying to predict environments that do not give clean feedback. This matters because intuition is strongest when the environment contains real cues and real feedback. That sock game had real cues. The stripe patterns were real. The mismatches were visible. The environment was simple enough for insight to matter. Kahneman and Klein argue that skilled intuition works best when there are valid cues in the environment and enough opportunity to learn from feedback. Otherwise, confidence can exceed accuracy. But many emotional environments are not like that. Manipulative people do not give clean cues. Inconsistent workplaces do not give clean cues. Ambiguous relationships do not give clean cues. Trauma histories do not give clean cues. So what does a high simulation mind do? It works harder, it scans more, it replays more, it tries to compensate for a messy environment by increasing internal effort. And this is why some INFJs become incredibly sharp and incredibly tired. There is another answer too. Simulation becomes suffering when it turns from observation into self-blame. That is the counterfactual loop. I should have known. I should have said something sooner. I should have taken the opportunity. I should have seen that coming. Counterfactual thinking can help people learn. That part matters. It can improve future behavior. It can sharpen preparation. It can help you say, next time I'll do this differently. But it also has a shadow. Because if every reflection becomes an accusation, you don't end up wiser. You end up burdened. And that burden is heavy for people who already feel things deeply. Counterfactual thinking can improve future performance and behavioral regulation, but it is also tightly linked to regret and distress when it becomes repetitive or self-punishing. And that burden is heavy for people who already feel things deeply. This is the part many viewers may not say out loud. Sometimes what hurts is not just seeing patterns, it is seeing them early. And still doubting whether you are allowed to trust what you see. That's exhausting. To sense it, name it internally, feel the future pull of it, and then tell yourself you might be dramatic or unfair or arrogant or thinking too much. Now let's go back to the question from the sock game. Why did winning that way even create a moment of guilt? Why did the thought, is that cheating, show up at all? Because I think that question reveals something very deep. For many INFJs, strategy can feel morally suspicious, not because strategy is wrong, but because they often associate goodness with honesty, effort, and fairness. So when their brain finds leverage, sees the shortcut, or identifies the pattern that makes the system easier to navigate, there can be a weird internal discomfort. Should I have done it like everyone else? Did I take an unfair advantage? Was that manipulative? But let's tell the truth, you did not cheat. You observed, you sequenced, you reduced error, you delayed the confusing category until the end. That is not cheating, that is strategy. And strategy is not dishonesty. Strategy is stewardship. It is using attention well. It is understanding the structure of a situation. It is respecting the reality of how things actually work. In fact, many people who call this lucky are only saying that because they did not notice the same cues. This is important for INFJs because many of you diminish your own intelligence when it doesn't look loud. You think insight only counts if you can explain it in an instantly acceptable way. But a lot of real insight arrives before language. You feel it first, you sense the pattern first, then words show up later. In Myers-Briggs language, introverted intuition is described as internally connecting themes and insights that may be difficult to explain immediately to others. That doesn't mean every hunch is correct. It means some forms of intelligence are quieter than people expect. So then the real goal is not to stop simulating. The real goal is to become wise about how you use it. Before I give you the practical steps, I want to say something that matters to me. I use AI tools, I do. But the real human version of me researches and develops every script on this channel. The questions are mine. The life behind the examples is mine. The pattern recognition is mine. The refining is mine. AI helps me produce, but it does not replace the human work, and I think that matters. Because these videos are lived experience turned into language. So if you've ever wondered if there's a real person behind this, there is. Now let's talk about how to keep the gift without becoming trapped inside it. Practice these shifts, honestly. You do not lose your edge, you refine it. Here are the shifts I want you to practice, not perfectly, just honestly. First, name the simulation. When your mind is racing, don't immediately call it overthinking. Ask a better question. What scenario am I running right now? That question alone changes things because I'm overthinking feels vague and shame-based, but I'm running a rejection scenario, or I'm running a worst-case conversation scenario, or I'm running a future burnout scenario. That creates clarity, and clarity reduces emotional fusion. Second, separate forecast from fact. You may be sensing something real, but sensing is not the same as proof. So write it in 2 columns if you need to. What I know, what I'm predicting. For example, what I know, this person has been inconsistent 3 times. What I'm predicting, they may disappoint me again. That distinction protects both your intuition and your integrity because now you are not gaslighting yourself, but you are also not pretending your prediction is already a verdict. Third, limit yourself to 3 scenarios, not 15, not 30, 3. Best case, likely case, worst case. Why? Because many high simulation minds are not suffering from a lack of insight. They're suffering from an excess of branches. The goal is not to eliminate foresight. The goal is to reduce unnecessary branching. If you run 3 clean scenarios, you usually have enough information to act. Anything beyond that often starts serving emotional avoidance, not wisdom. Fourth, turn mental rehearsal into a real plan. This is where a lot of people get stuck. They imagine, 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 and never translate thought into structure. That is why I love if-then planning. It is simple, it is clean, and it gives your mind somewhere to land. Implementation intentions, or if-then plans, help people translate intentions into action and have consistently improved goal attainment in research reviews. So instead of, I need to stop overthinking this conversation, try, if I start imagining 10 different versions of this conversation, then I will draft 3 points and schedule the call. Instead of, I need to make a decision about this opportunity, try, if I still want this after 24 hours, then I will send the email before noon tomorrow. That matters because your mind respects structure. You don't need less depth, you need cleaner scaffolding. Fifth, get real-world data faster. This one will change your life if you let it. Because many simulations stay powerful only because reality never gets a chance to answer them. Send the draft, ask the question. Test the offer, have the meeting. Pitch the idea, visit the place, try the class, make the call. You do not need total certainty to gather one round of real-world information, and one round of real-world information is often more useful than 6 more hours of internal prediction. Sixth, watch for the moment strategy becomes self-protection. This is subtle because self-protection can sound noble inside a thoughtful mind. It can sound like preparation. It can sound like emotional intelligence. It can sound like responsibility. So ask yourself, am I preparing for reality or am I postponing vulnerability? That one question can expose a lot. Sometimes the answer will be, no, I genuinely am preparing. Good. Sometimes the answer will be, if I'm honest, I'm delaying because action would make this real. Also good, because honest awareness is better than blind looping. Seventh, review your accurate signals without idolizing them. In other words, build trust with yourself, not worship, not paranoia, trust. Think about the times you sensed something accurately, the times you saw the blue socks, the times you noticed the hidden problem, the times a relationship dynamic felt off and later proved off, the times you knew a plan looked shiny but didn't feel sustainable. Those memories matter, not because you need to become obsessed with being right, but because you need evidence that your mind is not random. And then pair that with humility, because the same mind that sees patterns can also fear them into existence when it is tired, wounded, or overstretched. So the healthy posture is not, I'm always right. It is, I have real pattern sensitivity and I use it best when I stay grounded. Eighth, come back to the body. This may sound small, but it is huge. Simulation lives in the mind, reality lives in the body. Breath, posture, walking, stretching, looking out a window. Feeling your feet on the floor, drinking water, doing one tangible thing in the room you are actually in. Why? Because when you have mentally gone 10 minutes, 10 months, or 10 years into the future, your nervous system needs help returning to now. And sometimes wisdom is not one more thought. Sometimes wisdom is contact with the present. Let me summarize those quickly. Name the simulation, separate forecast from fact, limit the branches, turn it into an if-then plan, get real-world data, notice when strategy becomes avoidance, build grounded trust in your signals, return to the body. If you practice those, you do not lose your edge, you refine it. Because the goal is not to become less perceptive. The goal is to become less trapped by what you perceive. Let's end where we started, at the baby shower, at the pile of socks, at the moment where working harder did not win. It was because seeing clearly did. I think a lot of INFJs have lived their whole life with that experience. You're in the same room as everyone else, looking at the same situation as everyone else, given the same general information as everyone else. And yet, internally, you are seeing a different layer of the game. Sometimes that helps you, sometimes it isolates you, sometimes it makes you effective, sometimes it makes you tired, sometimes it makes people call you intense. Sometimes it makes you doubt yourself because what feels obvious to you does not look obvious to them. But I hope today helps you hold a more compassionate interpretation of your mind. Maybe you are not simply overthinking, maybe you are simulating. Maybe your mind is trying to protect you, prepare you, and position you. Maybe the real work is not shutting that down, but learning when to trust it, when to test it, and when to stop feeding it. Because simulation without action becomes exhaustion, but simulation paired with clarity can become wisdom. And if you remember nothing else from this video, remember this. The difference between you and the woman at the sock table was not effort, it was sequence. It was perception, it was seeing where confusion lived before you stepped into it. That is not cheating, that is a form of intelligence. What matters now is learning how to use it in a way that serves your life instead of swallowing it. And if this video resonated with you, the next one I want you to watch is INFJs don't distrust people, they distrust kindness. Because these two conversations connect deeply. One is about why certain minds question what they see, and this one is about what happens when those same minds simulate too far ahead. If you want deeper conversations off the algorithm, join us there. If this gave language to something you've carried for years, subscribe. And if you've been calling yourself an overthinker your whole life, maybe try a new sentence. Maybe say, my mind runs simulations. Now I'm learning how to use them well. I'll see you in the next video.